In the dim light of the kitchen, I finally found my voice. "Elena, we need to talk," I whispered, my hands still clutching the crumpled schedule like a lifeline. But Elena didn't even look up from her phone, scrolling through whatever social media feed held her attention. "Not now, Mom. I'm busy planning our weekend getaway." And just like that, the conversation was dismissed, leaving me alone with the weight of it all pressing down on my chest. That moment replayed in my mind over and over as I lay awake that night, staring at the familiar cracks in the ceiling of the bedroom that had been mine for decades. How had it come to this? I, Maria Gonzalez, a 68-year-old widow who had built this life from nothing, reduced to a shadow in my own home. But to understand, I suppose I need to go back to the beginning, or at least to the day it all shifted irreparably. It started 2 years ago when my daughter Elena showed up at my doorstep, her husband Marco in tow, and their 2 children, little Sofia and Matteo, clinging to her legs. They had been evicted from their apartment after Marco lost his job in the factory downturn. Elena's eyes were red from crying, her voice trembling as she hugged me tightly. "Mom, please," she begged. "It's just for a few months. We'll get back on our feet. You're our only hope." How could I say no? This was my daughter, the girl I'd raised single-handedly after her father walked out when she was 5. I'd worked double shifts as a nurse's aide in the local hospital, scrimping and saving to buy this modest 2-story house in the suburbs. It was my sanctuary, my achievement after years of back-breaking labor. At first, it was almost a blessing. The house, quiet since my husband Pablo passed away from cancer 5 years earlier, came alive with the sounds of children. Sophia, then 4, would toddle after me in the kitchen, her chubby hands helping me stir cookie dough. Matteo, 6 and full of energy, would race around the backyard, kicking a soccer ball against the fence I'd painted myself. Elena pitched in with laundry, and Marco fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom. Small things that made it feel like a family again. I covered the groceries because we're all eating under one roof, and it seemed fair. My pension from the hospital, $750 a month, was enough to stretch, especially since they promised to contribute once Marco found work. But promises fade, don't they? Weeks turned into months, and the helping hands withdrew. Elena got a part-time job at a call center, but her shifts were exhausting, so she started asking me to handle dinner. Marco landed a gig as a delivery driver, but he was on call most days, lounging on the couch with his laptop open to sports streams. The children, adorable as they were, became my full-time responsibility. School drop-offs, homework help, bedtime stories. "You're so good with them, Mom," Elena would say with a grateful smile. "We couldn't do this without you." Gratitude turned to expectation. One evening, about 6 months in, Elena handed me a grocery list. "Mom, can you pick these up? Marco's bonus hasn't come through yet." I nodded, dipping into my savings. Soon, it was utilities, school supplies, even their cell phone bills. "It's temporary," Marco assured me, clapping me on the back like we were old pals. But temporary became permanent. My living room, once filled with framed photos of Pablo and me on our trips to the beach, now sported posters of Marco's favorite bands. My bookshelf, lined with novels I'd collected over years, was cleared for the kids' toys in Elena's makeup collection. The leather armchair I'd splurged on after my retirement, now stained with juice spills and crayon marks. Then came the day that shattered everything. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was folding laundry in the den when Elena strode in, Marco trailing behind with that smug grin he wore when he thought he was being clever. "Mom, we've been thinking," Elena said, her tone firm, like she was addressing a subordinate at work. She handed me a neatly typed sheet of paper. "Starting tomorrow, these are your new responsibilities in this house." I stared at the page, my heart sinking. It was a schedule, hour by hour, dictating my every move. 5:30 a.m. Rise and prepare breakfast for the family. First, wake the children, dress them, pack lunches, and drive them to school. All Bob or deep clean the bathrooms and kitchen. Account laundry, wash, dry, fold. 10 town grocery shopping and errands. The list marched on relentlessly. Lunch prep at noon, afternoon snacks, homework supervision, dinner at 6, bedtime routines at 8, and evening tidying until 10 p.m. Even my free time was slotted for mending clothes or organizing the garage. "If you don't agree," Elena continued, her eyes narrowing, a sharpness I'd never seen before, "you can pack your bags and go. This house needs someone who pulls their weight, not a freeloader." Marco chimed in from the armchair, not bothering to pause his video game. "And yeah, that includes chipping in for bills. Your pension covers it, right? We're all in this together." My hand shook as I held the paper. This was my house, the one I'd paid off after 35 years of nursing shifts, bandaging wounds, comforting the dying. I'd raised Elena here, bandaged her scraped knees, celebrated her graduations, held her through breakups. Now she looked at me like I was an inconvenience, a relic taking up space. "You don't have long to decide, Mom," Elena said, filing her nails with a bright red polish that matched her lipstick. "Marco's already consulted a lawyer. We've been here over 2 years, paying utilities sometimes, maintaining the place. We have squatters' rights or something like that. So either you step up as our helper and stay, or you leave, and we keep the house." The threat hung in the air like smoke. My deed, tucked away in the safe upstairs, suddenly felt meaningless. At my age, with a meager pension, where would I go? A dingy apartment? A shelter? "Think about it," Elena added, blowing on her nails. "At least here you have a bed, meals, and you get to see Sophia and Mateo every day. Unless you'd rather rot in some senior home on $750 a month." Marco snorted a laugh. "Come on, Maria, be real. What else you got going on? This gives you purpose. Better than knitting or whatever old folks do." The kids were sprawled on the rug, absorbed in their tablets. Sophia glanced up. "Abuela, can you make popcorn?" "I'm bored." It was so innocent, yet it stung. To them, I was already the fixer, the provider, not the grandmother who'd spoiled them with stories and treats, but the invisible hand that kept their world running. Elena approached, placing a hand on my arm in mock affection. "It's not that we don't care, Mom. We love you. That's why we're offering this chance to stay. But the house needs structure. Someone has to handle the daily grind." "Why me?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Because you're retired," Marco shot back without glancing away from his screen. "We have jobs, real lives. You just cash your check and sit around." The words hit like a punch. 35 years in healthcare. Nights spent holding hands of the terminally ill. Days rushing between patients, saving every dime for this home. Raising Elena alone, no child support, no breaks. Sit around? I echoed, anger bubbling. All these years keeping this roof over our heads, paying for everything, caring for your kids while you relax, that's nothing? Elena waved it off with that patronizing smile. That's just basic stuff, Mom. Anyone in a household does that. Now it'll be organized, efficient. It's for the best. I scanned the room. The oak dining table I'd refinished myself was scarred from hot pans and spills. The curtains I'd sewn hung frayed from the kids pulling on them. My photo albums? Shoved into the attic to make room for Marco's gaming setup. Plus, Elena went on, this routine will be good for you. You've seemed so listless lately. Structure fights depression, you know? Think of it as therapy. The gaslighting burned. They were framing my enslavement as self-improvement. Marco added weekends too. Saturdays for yard work and deep cleans. Sundays meal prepping. We're not monsters, we just want a functional home. A functional home, I repeated, fury replacing numbness. This is my home. I bought it, maintained it, welcomed you when you were homeless. A functional home, I repeated, fury replacing numbness. This is my home. I bought it, maintained it, welcomed you when you were homeless. Now it's our family home. Elena countered smoothly. Everyone contributes. We earn, you maintain. Fair's fair. Mateo tugged at my sleeve. Abuela, juice please? His eyes wide, expectant, just like Elena's at that age. In a minute, mi amor, I said, stroking his hair. No, Elena snapped. Mateo, ask it's snack time. It's 3 p.m. That's on the schedule anyway. I shuffled to the kitchen, legs heavy, the paper still in my fist. The pantry was barren. A few stale crackers, an old jar of peanut butter, rice gone weevil-infested. Fridge? Elena's diet sodas, Marco's energy drinks, wilted veggies. Abuela, no juice. Sophia whined. Elena followed, heels clicking authoritatively. Mom, tomorrow's shopping day. Here's the list. About $200 worth. And pick up my prescriptions and Marco's protein shakes. $200? I protested. My pension won't cover that weekly, she sighed. Mom always complaining. Marco's saving for our dream condo. We can't waste on basics. You eat here too, contribute. Kids come first. Don't be selfish. Selfish. With my money, in my house. Marco sauntered in, yawning. Tough day driving deliveries. Make something hearty for dinner? He'd worked from home, napping till noon. But you were here all morning, I muttered. Remote planning, he grumbled. Stressful. Need quiet to unwind. The contradictions piled up. Follow the schedule, but adapt to their whims. Cook on time, but silently during their rest. Elena leaned in, smile sharp. Oh, and about your room. We need the master. It's bigger for us and the kids' stuff. You take the guest room downstairs. My sanctuary. The room with Pablo's old dresser, our wedding photos. It's tiny, I said. Perfect for you, she replied. Closer to the laundry too, easier for chores. Efficiency over dignity. Move this weekend, she chirped. We'll keep most furniture, it's practical. Sophia dashed in. Abuela, my doll's broken. Elena blocked her. Wait, Abuela's busy. She'll fix it later. Even the kids needed permission now. And Sundays, Elena added. Our family time. Go out. Church, walks. Give us space. My day with the grandkids, baking, park trips, stolen. Where? I choked. Figure it out. Be independent. That night, insomnia gripped me. How had love turned to exploitation? From best mom to burden, at 2 a.m. kitchen noises. Marco, raiding snacks, leaving wrappers everywhere. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah, midnight munchies. He left the mess. I cleaned Silent Servant Friday. Elena descended in a new sundress. Watch the kids this weekend. Marco and I have a spa retreat. Deserve it after stress. With what? I asked. His overtime pay. Kids are fine with you. It's on the schedule. As she left, I realized this was my life now. But as I watched Sophia and Matteo play, a spark ignited. Maybe it was time to talk, for real. To reclaim what was mine. In the bustling suburb of Oak Ridge, where manicured lawns hid the quiet desperations of everyday lives, lived Maria Alvarez, a 68-year-old widow with a spine of steel that had been bent but not broken by decades of hardship. Maria had worked as a schoolteacher for over 40 years, molding young minds in underfunded classrooms while raising her only son, Javier, after her husband passed away from a sudden heart attack when Javier was just 12. Now retired, Maria's modest pension was her lifeline, supplemented by the equity in the cozy 3-bedroom house she'd bought with her late husband in the 1980s. A home filled with faded photos, worn furniture, and memories that whispered of better days. It had started innocently enough. 2 years ago, Javier, now 38 and a mid-level manager at a tech firm, had called her one rainy evening. "Mom, Sophia and I are struggling," he'd said, his voice laced with the charm that always melted her resolve. Sophia, his wife of 10 years, was a freelance graphic designer whose gigs had dried up during the pandemic. They had 2 kids, little Sophia Jr., whom everyone called Sophie, 9, and Matteo, 6. "The rent's killing us, and with the kids' school fees. Could we stay with you for a bit? Just until we get back on our feet?" Maria had agreed without hesitation. What mother wouldn't? But a bit stretched into months, then years. What began as shared chores evolved into an unspoken hierarchy where Maria became the invisible engine keeping everything running. Javier and Sophia contributed sporadically to bills, but mostly they saved for their dreams. A bigger house, vacations, early retirement. Maria's pension covered the mortgage, utilities, groceries, and even the kids' extracurriculars. She cooked, cleaned, chauffeured the children to soccer practice and ballet, all while Javier worked his 9 to 5 and Sophia tinkered on her laptop from the comfort of the living room couch. One crisp autumn morning in October 2025, Maria stared at the laminated schedule pinned to the fridge door, a grid of color-coded tasks that Javier had printed out the week before. "It's for efficiency, Mom," he'd explained with a patronizing smile. "We all have roles in this family." Her role filled every slot from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Breakfast prep, school drop-offs, laundry, lunch, errands, dinner, bedtime stories, and spot cleaning. The free time was laughable. 15-minute gaps labeled rest break, barely enough to catch her breath or sip a lukewarm coffee. That morning, as Maria scrubbed the kitchen counters she'd paid for with her teacher's salary, Sophia breezed in, scrolling through her phone, her yoga pants and oversized sweater screaming casual luxury. "Mom, the kids need organic lunches today. No processed stuff. Mateo's teacher said he's been hyper." Sophia didn't look up, her fingers flying across the screen, likely posting about her balanced life on social media. Maria paused, sponge in hand, feeling a familiar knot tighten in her chest. "Sophia, I used the last of the organic veggies yesterday." "And the budget?" My pension check doesn't come until next week. Sophia finally glanced up, her perfectly arched eyebrows furrowing in mock confusion. Budget? Mom, we're family. Javier and I are building our future. His promotion, my business launch. You've had your career. Now it's our turn to thrive. Besides, you love taking care of the kids. It's what grandmas do. The words stung like salt in an old wound. Maria wasn't thriving. She was surviving, her joints aching from constant motion, her savings dwindling to cover family expenses. But protesting felt futile. Last time she'd mentioned fairness, Javier had sighed dramatically. Mom, at your age, stability is key. Where else would you go? We're doing you a favor by keeping the house lively. The day wore on in a blur of tasks. By evening, as Maria folded Javier's work shirts, ironed to crisp perfection, Sophia announced their weekend plans. Javier and I are heading to that spa retreat in the mountains. It's our anniversary, you know. You'll handle the kids, right? We've left a detailed list. Maria's heart sank. The list was a novella. Meal plans with calorie counts, screen time limits, educational games, and even bedtime affirmations. And Mom, Sophia added, slipping on her coat, make sure the house is spotless when we return. We might have clients over next week. Javier pecked Sophia on the forehead, then turned to Maria with a nod. Thanks, Mom. Oh, and my sister Carla is dropping by Monday. She's going through a rough patch. Divorce stuff. She'll need the guest room. Could you stock up on her favorites? Gluten-free everything. Carla, Javier's estranged sister. Maria hadn't seen her in years, and their interactions had always been frosty. Carla viewed Maria as old-fashioned, a relic from a bygone era. Now she'd be another mouth to feed, another set of demands in Maria's home. As the couple drove off in Javier's sleek SUV, paid for with a loan Maria had co-signed, the kids tugged at her sleeves. Abuela, can we have pizza? Sophie asked, eyes wide. Mateo chimed in. Mom says only healthy food. Maria sighed, pulling out her wallet. Pizza wasn't on the list, but the kids deserved a treat. She ordered delivery, dipping into her emergency fund, knowing it'd mean skipping her blood pressure meds refill. The weekend unfolded like a marathon of mishaps. Saturday started with Mateo knocking over a vase during a game of tag, a cheap thrift find, but Sophia's vintage decor. Mom will be mad if it's broken forever, Sophie wailed. Maria rushed to the store with the kids in tow, spending $40 on glue and replacement flowers. At the checkout, Mateo spotted the gourmet chocolate Sophia loved. For Mommy when she comes back, he pleaded. Another $15 gone by afternoon, Javier texted, Mom, forgot to mention, buy fresh linens for Carla. She has allergies. Use the card. But the card was Maria's credit card, already maxed from last month's family groceries. Sunday brought more chaos. While baking cookies per the list, low sugar, of course, Sophie spilled flour everywhere. Cleaning up, Maria discovered the pantry was bare. Sophia's relaxing trip meant no restocking. Another trip to the market, $60 vanished on essentials, her arthritic knees protesting every step. Exhausted, Maria collapsed into her armchair that evening, the kids finally asleep. Her phone buzzed, a call from Rosa, her neighbor of 20 years, a retired nurse with a no-nonsense demeanor and a heart of gold. Maria, you look like a ghost lately. Bags under your eyes, always hauling groceries. What's eating you? Maria hesitated, but the dam broke. Rosa, come over? I need advice. Rosa arrived within minutes, her warm hug smelling of lavender soap. In the kitchen, amid the gleaming counters Maria had polished, she poured out the truth. The schedule, the financial drain, the emotional isolation. They treat me like staff, Rosa, my own son. And now Carla's coming. Another person expecting me to serve. Rosa's face hardened, her eyes flashing with righteous anger. Maria, this isn't family. This is elder abuse, plain and simple. Exploitation wrapped in roles and responsibilities. You own this house. You have a pension. They're parasites, not providers. The word abuse echoed in Maria's mind. For months, she'd rationalized it. Generational differences, modern parenting. But Rosa's words pierced the fog. What if it gets worse? Boundaries erode, Maria. Today it's a schedule. Tomorrow they'll have you in a nursing home while they sell your house. As Javier and Sofia returned that night, glowing from their getaway, they inspected the house like landlords. Mom, the fridge is low on kale, Sofia complained. And the kids' homework isn't done? Maria bit her tongue, but Rosa's question lingered. If a paid helper endured this, unpaid labor, constant demands, how long would they stay? Monday dawned gray and ominous. At 6 a.m., the doorbell jolted Maria awake. There stood Carla, 62, with 3 suitcases and a haughty sniff. About time. The flight was hell. Where's my room? I need rest, and breakfast by 7. Light omelet, no yolks, herbal tea, fresh berries. Javier mentioned you'd handle it. Maria, still in her robe, stifled a yawn. Good morning, Carla. The guest room's ready, but... Carla waved her off, wheeling her bags inside. Guest room? Javier said the master suite. I have back issues. Need space. She surveyed the living room with disdain. These cushions are lumpy. Replace them today. And the lighting's dim. Bad for my reading. Maria lugged the bags upstairs, her back twinging, while Carla critiqued everything. That painting's tacky. Dust on the shelves, sloppy. In the master bedroom, Maria's former sanctuary, now Javier and Sofia's, Carla flopped onto the bed. Wash these sheets organic only. I'm sensitive. By 7, Carla demanded her meal. Maria rummaged the fridge. No berries, no herbal tea. I can make eggs and toast. Unacceptable. Carla barked. Javier promised proper care. This house is a mess without basics. Javier emerged, tie askew. Mom, what's the fuss? Your helper, Carla sneered, can't provide a simple breakfast. Mom, didn't you shop? Javier sighed. Go now. Use your card. But Maria stood firm, a spark igniting. Javier, my pension's tapped. I covered everything this weekend. Your kids' needs, the house. I can't afford more. The room froze. Javier gaped. You're refusing? For Aunt Carla? I'm saying, Maria replied steadily, we need to discuss fairness. This is my home. My money, Carla gasped dramatically. Ingratitude. After we grace your lonely life? Sofia, roused by the noise, joined in. Mom, hormones at your age. Maybe see a doctor. This attitude. But Maria felt the break inside her mending, piece by piece. That afternoon, after Carla's tantrum led to a grudging compromise, cereal from the pantry, Maria called Rosa. I think it's time for boundaries. Over the next weeks, Maria began small rebellions, charging for... Over the next weeks, Maria began small rebellions, charging for groceries, reclaiming her bedroom, revising the schedule collaboratively. Javier and Sofia resisted, threats of leaving hanging in the air. But Maria, bolstered by Rosa's support and a lawyer's advice on her rights, held ground. "This is my house," she declared one evening. "We share as equals, or you find your own." It wasn't easy. Arguments flared. Carla left in a huff after a week, but slowly respect trickled back. Javier started contributing more. Sofia took on chores. The kids noticed the shift, hugging Maria not as a servant, but as abuela. In the end, Maria reclaimed her life, proving that at 68, it was never too late to say enough. The house, once a prison of obligations, became a home again, shared, not exploited. And in quiet moments, Maria smiled, knowing her story wasn't over. It was just beginning anew. Once upon a time in a quiet suburban neighborhood, there lived a widow named Eleanor Hayes. At 68 years old, Eleanor had spent the last decade alone in the cozy two-story home she and her late husband, Arthur, had purchased back in the 1980s. Arthur had passed away from a sudden heart attack, leaving Eleanor to navigate life on her modest pension and the savings they'd built together. The house, with its flower-filled garden and sunlit kitchen, was her sanctuary, a place filled with memories of raising their only child, her son, Marcus. But 2 years ago, that sanctuary had been invaded under the guise of family love. It all started when Marcus, then 38, and his wife Sofia showed up at Eleanor's doorstep one rainy evening. Marcus worked as a mid-level manager at a logistics company, but the couple had fallen on hard times after Sofia lost her job as a graphic designer during the economic downturn. They had 2 young children, little Mia, aged 7, and Theo, aged 5. "Mom, it's just for a few months," Marcus had pleaded, his eyes wide with desperation. "Until we get back on our feet. We promise we'll contribute as soon as we can." Eleanor, ever the doting mother, couldn't turn them away. She opened her home, converting the guest room into a space for the kids and letting Marcus and Sofia take the larger bedroom upstairs. At first, it seemed like a blessing. The house echoed with laughter again, the pitter-patter of small feet, the chatter of family dinners. Eleanor adored her grandchildren and found joy in baking cookies with them or reading bedtime stories. But slowly the dynamics shifted. Marcus and Sofia began treating the house as their own. They hosted barbecues without asking, rearranged furniture to suit their tastes, and gradually offloaded more and more household tasks onto Eleanor. "Mom, you're retired anyway," Sofia would say with a sweet smile. "It gives you something to do." Eleanor found herself doing the laundry for 5, cooking elaborate meals and cleaning up after everyone, all while her pension covered the rising grocery bills and utilities. The few months stretched into a year, then 2. Promises of finding their own place faded into excuses. The housing market was too expensive, jobs were unstable, the kids needed stability. Eleanor tried to voice her concerns, but Marcus would brush them off. "We're family, Mom. We take care of each other." Yet the care seemed one-sided. Eleanor's savings dwindled as she paid for school supplies, family outings, and even a new TV for the living room that Sofia insisted they needed. When Eleanor suggested they contribute rent, Sofia laughed it off. Rent from family? That's cold, Eleanor. The breaking point came when Sophia's father, Victor, arrived unannounced. Victor was a gruff 75-year-old widower from the old country, with a penchant for complaining and a disdain for anyone who didn't cater to his whims. Sophia had invited him to stay after his health took a turn, high blood pressure and loneliness after losing his wife. "It's just temporary, Mom," Marcus echoed the familiar line, "until he adjusts." "You have that extra room downstairs," Eleanor protested. The room was her craft space, filled with sewing machines and yarn from her hobby days. But Victor moved in anyway, his suitcase cluttering the hallway, his booming voice demanding adjustments to the household routine. Cluttering the hallway, his booming voice demanding adjustments to the household routine. Victor treated Eleanor like hired help from day one. He criticized her cooking, too bland, woman, and expected her to fetch his medications, wash his clothes, and entertain him with endless cups of coffee. Sophia defended him fiercely. "He's my dad, Eleanor. Show some respect." Marcus, caught in the middle but always siding with his wife, would nod along. The grandchildren, sensing the tension, grew quieter around the adults. One crisp autumn morning, the storm finally brewed in the kitchen. Eleanor had just finished her meager breakfast of toast and tea when Victor shuffled in, his slippers slapping against the tile. "Where's my proper breakfast?" he grumbled, peering into the fridge. "I need eggs, bacon, fresh bread, not this nonsense you call food." Eleanor sighed. Her pension check had arrived the day before, but after paying the bills and covering last week's groceries, she had barely $50 left for the month. "Victor, we have cereal and milk. That'll have to do today." Sophia, overhearing from the living room where she was scrolling on her phone, marched in. "Eleanor, Dad needs a real meal. He's not used to this skimpy stuff. Just pop to the store and get what he wants." Marcus, tying his tie for work, chimed in, "Yeah, Mom, it's not a big deal. Family helps family." But Eleanor stood her ground, her hands trembling slightly on the counter. "I can't. I've already budgeted everything. If you want extras, perhaps you or Sophia could go." The argument escalated quickly. Victor huffed, "Ungrateful woman. After all we've brought to this dull house." Sophia crossed her arms, her voice sharp. "Eleanor, if you can't handle basic hospitality, maybe we need to rethink this setup." There it was, the veiled threat, the same one they'd used before. "Comply or lose your home. Serve us endlessly or watch us claim it as ours." Marcus adopted his managerial tone. "Mom, this isn't sustainable. If you refuse to pitch in, perhaps alternative living arrangements are needed." At that moment, Mia wandered in, rubbing her eyes, still in her unicorn pajamas. Her innocent presence shifted the room, like a referee entering a heated match. "What's wrong, Grandma?" she asked sleepily. Sophia knelt down, explaining in a saccharine voice. "Grandma doesn't want to get food for Grandpa Victor." "Isn't that sad?" Mia's eyes widened, turning to Eleanor with disappointment. The manipulation was masterful, twisting Eleanor's financial boundaries into heartless neglect. "It's not that," Eleanor defended, her voice cracking. "I just don't have the money right now." Marcus rolled his eyes. "Mom, always with the money drama. It's what, 20? Don't tell us you can't spare that for family. But $20 today would be $40 tomorrow. A endless siphon on her fixed income to appease a man who openly mocked her. And how long will Victor stay?" Eleanor pressed. Sophia waved vaguely. "Temporary until he settles." "Depends on how he likes the area, the routine." "The routine," Eleanor's routine of servitude, scrubbing, shopping, and subsidizing their lives. Something snapped inside her, not with fanfare, but like a frayed rope finally giving way. "Fine," she said evenly. "I'll go to the store." Relief washed over them. Order restored. But Eleanor detected the steel in her own voice, unnoticed by the others, accustomed to her compliance. She dressed quickly and headed out, but detoured to the bank first. Withdrawing $250 from her emergency fund, savings for a rainy day, and this deluge qualified, she marched to a law firm she'd seen advertised online. Family law specialists, protecting your rights. It was early 8:45 a.m., but the receptionist, a compassionate middle-aged man named Tom, squeezed her in. "Is it urgent?" he asked. "Very," Eleanor replied. Attorney Lisa Chen, a sharp woman in her late 40s with a no-nonsense bob and years of experience in elder law, listened intently as Eleanor poured out her story. The temporary stay turning permanent, the chores, the threats, Victor's imposition. For 25 minutes, Eleanor spoke, unburdening the weight of months. Lisa nodded, jotting notes, her face hardening with empathy. "Mrs. Hayes," Lisa said finally, "this is classic elder abuse, financial and emotional exploitation. Your son and daughter-in-law have no right to treat you this way." Eleanor blinked back tears. Validation at last. "But they've lived here 2 years. Do they have tenant rights?" Lisa explained. "Possibly some, but not to exploit you or invite unauthorized guests. We can address this." Options flowed. Written notices terminating informal agreements, setting boundaries, demanding Victor's departure. If refused, eviction or abuse reports. Lisa could draft letters that day. Rent at $900 a month for Marcus and Sophia. Equal expense shares. Respect for Eleanor's space. Cost: $150 consultation, $250 for documents. Affordable, especially compared to her family's drains. "Do it," Eleanor said, handing over cash with steady hands. Next, the bank, changing PINs, revoking Sophia's card access, for emergencies never repaid. The teller, sensing the story, processed swiftly. "Smart move," she whispered. By noon, Eleanor returned home empty-handed but armed. Sophia and Victor waited in the den, irritated. The kids were at school. Perfect timing. "Where's the food?" Victor barked. "We need to talk," Eleanor stated firmly. "Now!" Alarm flickered in their eyes. She produced the letters. "I've seen a lawyer. These outline new terms." Sophia snatched hers, scanning frantically. "Victor's demanded he leave in 72 hours. 900 rent?" Sophia gasped. "We can't afford that." Eleanor, "Then find what you can. Or get steady jobs. Victor. Outrageous." "I'm family." Eleanor, "Not my invitee." Sophia's tears came, calculated, pleading. "Mom, we love you." "This is extreme." Eleanor held firm. "Love isn't exploitation." Victor softened momentarily. "Maybe I can bunk elsewhere in the house?" But Eleanor clarified. "It's the imposition, not the room." Marcus rushed home after Sophia's frantic call, fury etched on his face. "This is betrayal, Mom." "After we've filled your lonely life," Eleanor countered, "you've drained it. Time for independence." Arguments flew. Expenses, age, family duty. Marcus threatened countersuits, but Eleanor stood tall. "Play lawyer games if you want. But this ends now." In the end, the letters worked. Victor left for a cousin's within days, grumbling. Marcus and Sophia, after heated negotiations, agreed to partial rent and chores, seeking their own place. Eleanor reclaimed her home, her dignity intact, vowing never to be a doormat again. The house felt peaceful once more, a true sanctuary. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of my small two-story house, casting delicate patterns on the hardwood floor. For years, this house had been my sanctuary, a place where I raised my daughter Sophia and later welcomed her back with her husband Carlos and their 2 children, Mia and Lucas. But over the past 3 years, it had become something else entirely, a battleground where my kindness was exploited and my home was no longer my own. Today, though, I was ready to change that. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, the warmth of the mug grounding me as I prepared for the confrontation I knew was coming. My lawyer, Rachel, had armed me with the knowledge I needed to take back control. The weight of her advice sat in a neat folder beside me, a legal lifeline I hadn't known I needed until recently. The trouble had started innocently enough. 3 years ago, Sophia and Carlos had fallen on hard times. Their apartment lease was up, Carlos had lost his job, and Sophia was struggling to balance part-time work with raising Mia and Lucas. "Mom, can we stay with you for a bit?" Sophia had asked, her voice trembling with worry. "Just until we get back on our feet." My heart ached for my daughter, so of course I said yes. I opened my home to them, along with Carlos's mother, Elena, who had nowhere else to go after her own apartment became too expensive. I thought it would be temporary, a few months maybe. But months turned into years and my home became theirs, while I became something closer to a live-in maid. Sophia and Carlos didn't pay rent. They didn't contribute to groceries or utilities either. Instead, they expected me to cook, clean, and care for Mia and Lucas while they figured things out. Elena, meanwhile, treated my home like her personal kingdom, rearranging furniture, criticizing my cooking, and demanding I run errands for her. I was 68 years old, still working part-time as a librarian, and yet I was expected to manage a household of 6 with no help. My pension disappeared into household expenses and my savings dwindled to nothing. I was exhausted, but worse, I felt invisible in my own home. The turning point came when I confided in my friend Margaret during one of our weekly walks in the park. "Clara, this isn't right," she said, her voice firm but kind. "You're not their servant. You're their mother, their grandmother, not their housekeeper." She urged me to talk to a lawyer, and that's how I found Rachel. Rachel laid it all out for me. Sophia and Carlos had no legal claim to my house, no matter how long they'd lived here. Their refusal to contribute financially or otherwise could even be considered elder exploitation, a serious offense. Armed with this knowledge, I felt a spark of hope I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't powerless. I could take my life back. That afternoon, I called a family meeting. Sophia, Carlos, and Elena sat in the living room, their expressions ranging from curious to defensive. Mia and Lucas were at school, which was a relief. I didn't want them caught in the crossfire. I took a deep breath, clutching Rachel's folder like a shield. "I've been doing some thinking," I began, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "This arrangement isn't working anymore. You've been living here for 3 years without paying rent or contributing to expenses. That ends now." Sophia's eyes widened. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "We're family. We're supposed to help each other." "Helping each other goes both ways," I replied. "I've been supporting all of you, cooking, cleaning, paying the bills, while you've contributed nothing. I'm done being taken advantage of." Carlos leaned forward, his jaw tight. We've been consulting about our rights, you know. Tenants who've lived somewhere for over 2 years have protections. Parents raising kids in a stable home have rights. Families who maintain a property have rights. His tone was smug, as if he'd already won. I'd been warned about this. Rachel had told me they might try to claim tenant rights, but I'd been warned about this. Rachel had told me they might try to claim tenant rights, but she'd also assured me their case was weak. Carlos, I said, keeping my voice calm, I suggest you show those consultations to a real lawyer. Mine has already explained that no court would grant tenant rights to people who haven't paid rent and have been exploiting the homeowner. Carlos's smug expression faltered. It was clear his consultations were nothing more than Google searches or half-baked advice from friends. I pressed on, pulling out my ace. And my lawyer also informed me that what you've been doing could be considered elder exploitation. That's a federal crime. If you want to bring lawyers into this, go ahead. But the legal consequences for you will be far worse than for me. The room fell silent. Even Elena, who had been glaring at me from the armchair, froze. Sophia's face crumpled and she whispered, "Are you threatening to sue us, Mom?" "I'm not threatening anything," I said. "I'm explaining the consequences of your actions, just like my lawyer explained them to me." At that moment, Mia and Lucas burst through the front door, back from school. Lucas, always the perceptive one, stopped short. "Why is everyone so quiet? Is Grandma okay?" Elena, who had been silent until now, let out a dramatic sob. But her tears weren't from sadness. They were from fury. From realizing she no longer controlled the situation she thought she'd mastered. "It's okay, sweetheart," I said, kneeling to hug Lucas. "The adults are just talking about how we're going to live in this house. Are we moving?" Mia asked, her big brown eyes wide with worry. My heart ached, but I answered honestly. "That depends on your parents. If they agree to follow the house rules and contribute fairly, you can stay. If not, they'll need to find another place." "What rules?" Lucas asked, his curiosity cutting through the tension. "Rules like everyone helps with expenses," I explained. "Rules like treating each other with respect. Rules like no one forces Grandma to do all the work," Carlos scoffed. "Clara, are you confusing the kids with this drama?" "The kids were already confused," I shot back. "They were confused watching their grandmother being treated like a servant. They were confused hearing their parents talk about taking over my house. Now they're hearing there's a better way to be a family." Sophia gathered Mia and Lucas into her arms, a calculated move to garner sympathy. "Kids, go do your homework. The adults need to talk." Once the children were gone, the air in the room grew heavier. Carlos broke the silence, his tone shifting to one of negotiation. "Okay, let's say you're serious. Let's say we agree to pay rent and contribute. How much time do we have to get organized?" I slid Rachel's folder across the table. "The legal notice gives you 30 days to either agree to the new terms or find another place to live." "And what about Mom?" Carlos asked, gesturing to Elena, who was still sobbing dramatically. "Elena has 48 hours, I said firmly. "She has no agreement with me, authorized or otherwise. Her presence here was an imposition, not an invitation. You can't kick an old woman out with 2 days' notice," Carlos protested. "I can and I will," I replied, surprising myself with my resolve. "Elena has her own home. If she doesn't want to live alone, she can stay with family who actually invited her or find a senior living facility." 3 months later, I woke up in my own bed at 8 a.m., not because anyone demanded it, but because I wanted to. The house was quiet, a peaceful kind of quiet I hadn't known in years. Elena had left on the second day, as specified, with a theatrical exit full of tears and promises never to speak to me again. She ended up in a senior living community, where, I later heard, she complained endlessly about the staff not being as efficient as I was. Sophia and Carlos tried every tactic in the book during those 30 days. First, they denied there was a problem, insisting it was all a misunderstanding we could resolve as a family. When that failed, they turned to guilt, reminding me I'd miss seeing Mia and Lucas grow up. Then came anger, Carlos shouting, Sophia crying, both accusing me of being heartless. But Rachel had prepared me for every move, and I held my ground with calm, legal responses. The kids will suffer because of you, Sophia had sobbed during one of her final pleas. The kids will learn that healthy families are built on respect, not exploitation, I'd replied, echoing Rachel's words. By the last week, their tone shifted to exaggerated politeness, calling me Mrs. Clara and peppering their speech with please and thank you. It was almost insulting, a last-ditch effort to manipulate me. But on the 30th day, they moved out to a modest apartment across town, one that cost $900 a month plus utilities. Funny how they suddenly found the money to pay a landlord when they couldn't pay me. The first days after they left were strange. The house felt too big, too empty. But that emptiness soon became freedom. I could eat what I wanted, watch what I wanted, spend my money on myself. The first time I bought a new pair of shoes for myself, ones I didn't need for chasing toddlers or running errands, I nearly cried in the store. They were $40 I could spend on myself, not on someone else's demands. Margaret was my rock throughout it all. We started gardening together, joined a book club, and even took a pottery class. "Don't you miss the chaos of the kids?" she asked one day as we shaped clay into lumpy vases. "I miss Mia and Lucas," I admitted, "but I don't miss being their unpaid nanny. There's a difference. The kids now visit every other Sunday, an arrangement we settled on after tense negotiations. Sophia tried to use their visits as leverage, but Rachel advised me to keep all communication in writing. Eventually, we reached an agreement. Mia and Lucas come from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., and we do things like bake cookies or visit the park. Things I can enjoy as their grandmother, not their caretaker. "Grandma, why don't you live with us anymore?" Mia asked during one of her first visits. "Because grown-ups need their own space to be happy," I explained. "Your parents need their home, and I need mine." Lucas, always the thinker, nodded. "Mom and Dad made you do too much work, didn't they?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said. "But now we're all learning how to be a better family." 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen, preparing for my new favorite hobby, ballroom dancing at the community center. At 68, I was learning to waltz, and I'd made friends who reminded me I was more than a grandmother or a mother. I was Clara, a woman with her own dreams. Rachel called last week to confirm that Sophia and Carlos had dropped any claims to my house. Their real lawyers had confirmed what I already knew. They had no case, and pursuing one would only expose their exploitation. "How does freedom feel, Clara?" Rachel asked with a grin. "Like waking up from a bad dream," I said. "Like remembering who I am." That morning, as I locked my front door and headed to the bus for dance class, I caught my reflection in the window. The woman staring back at me wasn't the tired, anxious shell I'd been for 3 years. She stood tall, her eyes bright with purpose. I'd reclaimed my home, my life, and my dignity. And I'd learned that love, true love, never asks you to sacrifice who you are.